Hello, esteemed gentlemen. The most irresistible force is the one that doesn't care if it's irresistible. In human behavior studies, psychologists have found that our brains are hardwired to chase what we can't fully predict. It's called the uncertainty principle of attraction. And if you've ever seen an alpha female go from Ice Queen to "Who is that?" in record time, chances are she just crossed paths with a Sigma male. It's not because he's louder, richer, or more dominant than alpha men. In fact, he's the opposite. He's the only man in the room who doesn't seem to be in the room for her at all, and that drives her wild. Stay tuned, because once you understand why alpha females are secretly obsessed with Sigma males, you'll realize it's not a game of seduction. It's a quiet coup. And no, Sigma males aren't some mystical wolfmen. They just figured out how to make confidence look like they accidentally left it lying around. Number one, he's immune to her most powerful weapon, social exile. When an alpha female crosses paths with a Sigma male, one of the first shocks she experiences is realizing that her most reliable weapon doesn't work on him, the power of social exile. In her world, influence is often maintained through networks, connections, and the unspoken threat of being shut out. If someone crosses her, undermines her, or refuses to play by her rules, she knows she can pull the strings to make their social life shrink until they feel the walls closing in. It works on alpha men because their position and identity often depend on being recognized and respected by the tribe. Remove that recognition, and their dominance weakens. But with a Sigma male, the entire structure collapses before it even begins. He's built his identity completely outside of the herd. He doesn't measure his worth by how many people are watching or approving. He's not in the inner circle because he never wanted to be there in the first place. There's no fear in him of being cast out because he was never seeking their shelter. He's self-contained, like an ecosystem that doesn't need imports to survive. When she realizes this, it creates a strange shift. It's not just that she can't control him. It's that her usual power moves have no effect whatsoever. It's like throwing a punch at a shadow. There's no resistance, no impact, and no victory to claim. The lack of leverage forces her into a place she rarely finds herself, curiosity mixed with frustration. Over time, that frustration becomes fascination. She can exile anyone else, but not him, because you can't exile someone who lives on the outskirts by choice. And paradoxically, the fact that he doesn't care to belong makes him seem even more valuable. He becomes the only man in her orbit who isn't there because of her orbit. That kind of independence doesn't just get her attention, it forces her to reevaluate what real power looks like. In a world where everyone's afraid to lose their place, the Sigma male's ability to walk away without losing anything isn't just rare. It's a form of unshakable freedom she can't buy, break, or bend, and that makes him unforgettable. Number two, he is an unmovable reference point in a world of status. Chameleons. In the high-stakes social world, alpha females dominate. Everyone around them is constantly shifting, bending, and adapting to stay relevant. It's a silent competition. People adjust their opinions, their tone, even their body language to align with her presence. Most do it subconsciously, but the effect is the same. She's used to being the gravitational center that others revolve around. Then a Sigma male steps in and the pattern breaks. He doesn't tilt his behavior to match hers, doesn't subtly agree to earn her approval, and doesn't inflate or shrink himself to fit the moment. His standards, values, and personal rhythm remain exactly the same whether she's across the room or nowhere in sight. He is, in every sense, an unmovable reference point. This is not stubbornness for its own sake. It's the quiet confidence of someone who has already decided who he is and doesn't renegotiate those terms for anyone. And that steadiness feels alien to her because in her world, identity is fluid. People morph, depending on who holds the most influence in the room. But with him, there's no morphing, there's no performance. What she sees is what exists, whether it benefits him socially or not. The effect is disarming. For a woman who's used to being the pivot point that determines others' movements, being unable to alter his position is both frustrating and magnetic. It's proof he's not playing her game, not because he's refusing to, but because he's operating on an entirely different field where her usual social leverage doesn't apply. That immovability forces her to confront a question she rarely asks. If he's not adjusting to her, who is he adjusting for? The answer, of course, is no one. And that kind of self-sustaining presence is a rare thing to find in any social landscape. It turns him into more than just another man in the room. He becomes a fixed coordinate in a world full of shifting shapes, the kind of constant that makes everything else feel unstable by comparison. It's in that subtle instability that her obsession quietly begins to grow. Number 3, he doesn't threaten her power, he ignores its currency. For an alpha female, power is rarely about brute force, it's about constant calibration. Every interaction is a subtle tug-of-war for position, a chess match where dominance is the unspoken prize. With alpha men, that game is inevitable. He pushes, she pushes back. He claims ground, she reclaims it. Even when it's playful, it's still a duel, and the tension keeps the game alive. Then she meets a sigma male, and suddenly, there's no game. He's not stepping into the ring with her, not because he's intimidated or indifferent to her strength, but because the very currency she trades in, recognition, social leverage, visible dominance, is meaningless to him. He's not just refusing to compete, he's opted out of the entire economy of status. That's where the disruption begins. When she realizes he's not collecting dominance points, it's like finding out the scoreboard she's been guarding so fiercely isn't even turned on. There's no victory to claim because he's not chasing it. And here's the twist. That absence of competition feels more magnetic than winning ever could. In her world, even an alpha man's respect comes with an undertone of rivalry, a reminder that his power still stands beside hers. But the sigma offers something radically different. He can stand in his own authority without undermining hers. His strength isn't conditional on reducing her shine, and that makes his presence unnervingly calm. The real hook is what this calmness does to her mindset. Without an opponent to outplay, she's left facing a quiet question she doesn't often entertain. Why am I fighting so hard for this throne? That kind of self-reflection can be uncomfortable, even destabilizing, for someone used to constant battles. The Sigma's refusal to validate the contest doesn't diminish her. It reframes her. It shows her a form of power that isn't dependent on winning, outshining, or holding position. And once she sees it, she can't unsee it. In a landscape where everyone is competing for the crown, the man who doesn't want it suddenly looks like the only one who doesn't need it. And that's a level of power she can't stop thinking about. Number 4. He creates psychological gravity instead of chasing orbit. Alpha males work to position themselves as the center of attention, the sun that everything else revolves around. They build their presence to be bright, loud, and unmistakable, making it clear who's in charge of the room. And while that works on many people, it's still a performance that requires constant energy to maintain. A Sigma male operates differently. He doesn't try to pull focus, but somehow the focus bends toward him anyway. His presence functions like gravity, invisible, constant, and impossible to ignore. It's not about shining brighter than others, it's about having a kind of inner mass that naturally draws people closer, even without conscious effort. This is what makes him so disruptive to an alpha female. She's used to spotting the contenders early, identifying the ones vying for center stage, and deciding whether to challenge or cooperate with them. The Sigma doesn't announce himself like that. He might be standing at the edge of the room saying very little, yet the flow of energy begins to shift in his direction. Conversations pivot subtly. Decisions take him into account without anyone realizing they're doing it. What makes this effect so compelling is that it's not forceful. It's organic. He's not demanding space or positioning himself for dominance. He simply exists in a way that makes the social structure realign around him. For someone like an alpha female, who is constantly aware of power dynamics, this is both fascinating and unsettling. It forces her to operate on his terms without him ever asking her to. Over time, she notices that he doesn't need to chase connections, opportunities, or influence. They drift toward him, and because it's not coming from performance or pressure, it feels more authentic, more unshakable. In a world where power usually comes from effort and assertion, he demonstrates a type of authority that requires neither. That's where the pull becomes addictive. She's not drawn in because he's competing for her attention. She's drawn in because she's already moving in his direction without meaning to. Proof that his gravity is stronger than any spotlight could ever be. Number 5. He's a mirror that doesn't flatter or distort. An alpha female is no stranger to people shaping their responses around her. Most men either go out of their way to validate her, praising her intelligence, her looks, her achievements, or they challenge her in a calculated way, trying to prove they're strong enough to stand toe-to-toe. Both approaches are predictable, and both are designed to maintain some kind of rapport with her. A Sigma male doesn't operate like that. He's not interested in flattering her for approval, and he's not baiting her with forced challenges to prove a point. Instead, he reflects back exactly what he sees. No embellishment, no strategic edits, no sugarcoating. His feedback, whether spoken or simply expressed in his reactions, is unfiltered. She sees herself through his eyes in a way that feels startlingly clear, even if it's not always comfortable. This is rare for her because she's used to being able to shape the lens through which people view her. She knows how to control conversations, manage impressions, and highlight only the parts of herself she wants others to see. With him, that control slips. He's not looking for the version she's curating. He's registering the version that's actually there. It's not that he's cruel or overly critical. It's that he doesn't feel the need to bend reality to keep her happy. If something she says doesn't land, he won't pretend it did. If she makes a strong point, he'll acknowledge it without acting impressed just for the sake of it. His responses are rooted in truth, not in strategy. That kind of authenticity can be disarming, especially for someone who's mastered the art of influence. It strips away the layers of social performance and leaves her face to face with herself, the good, the bad, and the unpolished. And because it's so uncommon, it becomes addictive. She keeps coming back, consciously or not, to see what he'll reflect next. In a world full of distorted mirrors designed to please or provoke her, the Sigma male is the rare one who shows her a clean, unaltered image. It's not always flattering, but it's always real. And once she's seen it, no other reflection feels satisfying. Number 6. He kills the thrill-seeking circuit. For an alpha female, attraction and interaction often run on a familiar fuel, the game. The subtle back and forth, the challenge, the chase, the power plays, all of it feeds her competitive edge. Even in romance or friendship, there's usually a strategic rhythm. Provoke, get a reaction, escalate, claim the win. It's not necessarily malicious, it's just how she stays engaged. Enter the Sigma male, and the pattern breaks. She throws out a move designed to spark a particular response, and instead of reacting on cue, he does nothing predictable. He doesn't get flustered, doesn't bite at the bait, and doesn't return fire just to keep the tension alive. Sometimes he sidesteps the moment entirely. Other times he responds in a way that's so neutral it leaves her momentarily off balance. This is where the short circuit happens. Her brain is used to the dopamine hit that comes from these exchanges, the thrill of seeing a plan land, the satisfaction of winning a small round. With him, that hit never arrives in the way she expects. He breaks the cycle by removing the payoff, but not in a way that feels like rejection. Instead, it's as if he's not even playing in that arena at all. At first, it can be frustrating. She's used to being able to gauge the progress of her interactions to see if she's gaining ground or losing it. With him, there's no scoreboard, but frustration quickly morphs into fascination. If she can't win with him, what exactly is happening between them? Why does she still feel drawn in when the usual markers of success aren't showing up? That's the hook. Without the predictable highs and lows of the game, she finds herself lingering longer than she would with someone she could easily conquer. His refusal to run the standard playbook means there's nothing to finish, no point at which she can declare victory and move on. By removing the predictable reward, the Sigma male does something no alpha man ever could. He makes the connection less about the thrill of winning and more about the mystery of why she still wants to play at all. And that's a puzzle she can't walk away from. Number 7, he's a quiet test she can't pass or fail. With alpha men, the rules of engagement are clear. An alpha female knows how to earn their approval, impress them, match their energy, challenge them just enough, and she can win the interaction. It's competitive but measurable, and if she's skilled, she can see exactly when she succeeded. A sigma male erases that entire framework. His attention doesn't follow a predictable pattern, and it's not tied to performance. She can be at her sharpest, most magnetic, and most captivating. And he might still remain the same. Other times, she could be relaxed and saying nothing remarkable, and he engages fully. There's no consistent trigger, no clear exchange rate between effort and response. This unpredictability isn't a strategy. He's not dangling his interest like a prize to be earned. It's simply not for sale. He gives it when he feels like it, and when he doesn't, there's nothing she can do to coax it out of him. That's the part that unsettles her. She can't outthink it, and she can't force it. For someone used to operating in a world where influence can be earned, negotiated, or wrestled into place, this is maddening, but it's also compelling. It strips the interaction of a finish line. There's no point where she can declare, "I've got him now." Instead, every exchange is its own isolated event, detached from the last and immune to the next. That lack of progress tracking turns him into a quiet kind of test, one she can't pass and can't fail. She's not winning, but she's also not losing. And in the absence of a clear outcome, she stays engaged far longer than she would with someone whose attention could be secured. What keeps her hooked isn't just the mystery of how to get more from him, but the realization that she might never fully be able to. And for an alpha female, used to bending situations to her will, that's an irresistible kind of frustration. The kind that keeps her coming back, just to see if this time will be different. Number 8. He treats her like a person, not a position. For an alpha female, almost every interaction is colored by her position. People see the title, the influence, the confidence, and respond to that before they respond to her as a human being. With alpha males, this dynamic is amplified. They tend to see her as the queen, either a prize to be won or a rival to be toppled. Even when the connection is friendly or romantic, there's still an undercurrent of positioning, as if every exchange is part of a larger game about who holds more power. A sigma male doesn't approach her like that. When he looks at her, the crown might as well be invisible. He speaks to her, challenges her, and responds to her based on who she is in that moment, not on what she represents in the social hierarchy. This isn't some calculated strategy to win her over. It's simply how he operates. He doesn't place himself in the same ladder-driven system she's used to, so her position within that system holds no special sway over him. For her, this is quietly disarming. She's accustomed to people either inflating her importance or trying to chip away at it. Both approaches are, in their own way, responses to her status. But with him, there's no inflation and no attack, just straightforward interaction. He asks the questions he actually wants to ask. He disagrees when he actually disagrees. He's unaffected by the symbols of power that most people react to. That level of unaffectedness is rare for her. It bypasses the filters she usually keeps up and forces her into more authentic exchanges. She can't use her position as leverage, and she doesn't have to defend it either. In that space, she's not a queen or a rival. She's simply herself, and that's an experience she doesn't get often enough to take for granted. The deeper truth is that being treated like a person, not a position, can feel more validating than any flattery aimed at her status. It strips away the politics and posturing, leaving something real in its place. And once she's felt that kind of interaction, going back to the usual crown-conscious conversations feels hollow by comparison. Number 9. He never needs a stage to be dangerous. An alpha female knows that most power players draw their strength from visibility. Titles, leadership roles, and loyal circles all act as amplifiers. If she wanted to weaken an alpha male, all she'd have to do is cut him off from his audience, remove his platform, or strip away his symbols of authority. Without that stage, most men's influence starts to fade. But a sigma male doesn't work that way. His influence isn't rooted in how many people see him, follow him, or rally behind him. It comes from how he moves, the decisions he makes, and the weight his presence carries, even in complete silence. If you took away his titles, his public role, or his social position, his impact would barely change. The people who matter would still seek him out. The conversations that matter would still happen around him. And the energy of a room would still shift when he walks in. This is where the realization hits her. Removing his visibility wouldn't remove his danger. In fact, it might make him even harder to track. He's the kind of man who doesn't need a spotlight to change the temperature of a room or alter the direction of events. His influence is embedded in the fabric of interactions, subtle enough to be underestimated until it's too late. That kind of quiet power is unnerving to someone who's used to controlling outcomes by controlling access. She can't shut down his platform because he doesn't stand on one. She can't cut him off from his followers because he's not dependent on them. And she can't predict when or how he'll exert his influence because it's not tied to scheduled appearances or public performances. The lack of obvious levers makes him far more unpredictable than any alpha male she's ever dealt with. With an alpha, she can play chess. With a sigma, the board doesn't even exist in the same way. And the more she realizes she can't control him by controlling his environment, the more she starts to watch him, closely, almost obsessively, trying to figure out where his power actually begins and ends. The unsettling truth? It doesn't. Number 10. He's not a threat, but he's not safe either. For an alpha female, clarity is power. She likes to know exactly where people stand, ally or rival, friend or opponent, asset or obstacle. Once she's labeled someone, she knows how to deal with them, how much trust to give, how much distance to keep, and what moves to make. That kind of categorization keeps her in control. A sigma male refuses to fit neatly into any category. He's not openly challenging her, undermining her, or competing for her position, so he can't be counted as a threat. At the same time, he's not playing the role of loyal supporter or willing subordinate, so he's not exactly an ally either. He operates in that in-between space, close enough to be significant, but distant enough to be unpredictable. That ambiguity forces her to stay alert. She has to watch him more closely, not because he's actively doing anything to unsettle her, but because she can't map his intentions. One moment he seems entirely on her wavelength. The next he's moving in a direction she didn't anticipate. This unpredictability makes it impossible to set and forget him in her mental hierarchy. And here's where the subtle shift happens. Vigilance, over time, turns into fixation. The constant need to monitor him, to figure out whether he's leaning toward ally or adversary, keeps him in her thoughts far more than anyone she's already classified. She doesn't realize it at first, but the act of watching him becomes its own habit. The real hook is that he's not trying to create this effect. He's not manipulating her perception or deliberately blurring the lines. He's simply moving according to his own priorities, which don't require him to make his position obvious. The more he operates on his own terms, the more she has to guess. And every guess is another moment of attention spent on him. In the end, he's not dangerous in the way she defines danger, but he's also not safe in the way she defines safety. And living in that gray zone is exhausting for her in the most addictive way possible, because the only way to resolve the question is to keep watching, and watching, and watching. Number 11. He's the social ghost who leaves a real impact. When an alpha male walks into a room, his presence is hard to miss. The energy spikes, the volume rises, and the social air fills with activity. But when he leaves, what's gone is mostly the noise and motion he created. People adjust quickly, conversations resume, and the atmosphere settles back into its natural rhythm. A sigma male works differently. His presence isn't about volume or theatrics, it's about weight. When he's there, he grounds the space in a way that often goes unnoticed until he's gone. People might not even realize they were orienting themselves around him, but they were, subtly, instinctively. Then he leaves, and it feels like the floor just shifted a little. For an alpha female, this is jarring. She's used to tracking high-energy personalities and deciding whether to engage or counter them. But with a sigma, the energy is quiet and stabilizing. It's not something she consciously locks onto, but her mind and emotions still adjust around it. When that grounding disappears, the absence hits harder than she expects. It's not a crash of silence like when an alpha exits. It's a strange, almost physical sense that something essential has been removed from the room. It doesn't matter if he spoke a lot or barely said a word. The loss is felt in the shift of the atmosphere. And the thing about that kind of absence is that it lingers. She might catch herself replaying their last interaction, wondering why the mood was different with him there. She might not even be able to articulate what he brought into the space. Only that she notices its absence. That aftershock is more powerful than any loud entrance or spotlight moment because it's not tied to showmanship. It's tied to the subtle gravity he exerts without asking for it. Over time, she realizes that his impact isn't about being seen or heard. It's about being felt. And being felt is far harder to erase than being noticed. That's why, long after he's gone, she's still aware of the space he occupied, and still wondering when or if he'll return to fill it again. Number 12. He defies her social forecasting skills. An alpha female's power isn't just in her confidence, it's in her ability to read the room like a seasoned strategist. She can spot patterns in people's behavior, anticipate their reactions, and adjust her moves to get the outcome she wants. With alpha men, this skill works almost flawlessly. Their competitive nature follows certain rhythms she can anticipate. Pride will make them defend themselves, ego will push them to prove a point, and ambition will pull them toward opportunities she can place in front of them. But with a Sigma male, her finely tuned radar starts returning static. He doesn't move according to the same emotional or social triggers. An opportunity that would lure another man might get no reaction at all. A jab meant to spark competitiveness might be met with complete indifference. He might engage deeply in one conversation and vanish from the next without explanation. There's no reliable pattern to exploit. This isn't because he's trying to be elusive, it's because his decisions aren't driven by the herd's logic. His priorities are internal, and they're not broadcast for others to read. He doesn't respond to social bait because he doesn't need the validation or advantages it promises. He's making moves on a frequency that doesn't register on the channels she's used to scanning. For her, this creates an unfamiliar and slightly unsettling problem. She can't game him. The strategies that normally give her an upper hand don't seem to work, which means her usual sense of control starts to erode. She's left guessing, not because she's suddenly bad at reading people, but because he's not playing the kind of game she's trained to read. And that unpredictability has a side effect she doesn't expect. Instead of dismissing him as too much work, she becomes more curious. Every time she thinks she's figured him out, he makes a decision that doesn't fit the profile she's built. The result is a constant mental loop of reevaluating and rethinking him, the kind of loop that turns a passing interest into a long-term fixation. For someone who's used to being 3 moves ahead, the Sigma male's refusal to move on her board at all is both frustrating and intoxicating. In the end, what makes alpha females secretly obsessed with Sigma males isn't that he tries harder, plays smarter, or competes better. It's that he operates on an entirely different frequency. While the world around her is locked in an endless loop of dominance games, status jockeying, and ego battles, he's quietly rewriting the rules by not playing them at all. Every encounter with him peels back a layer of her armor, not because he's trying to conquer her, but because he refuses to acknowledge the battlefield she's mastered. He doesn't chase her attention, yet somehow commands it. He doesn't fear her power, yet doesn't worship it either. And he never adjusts his identity to match her expectations, which makes him the one person in her world she can't predict, manipulate, or fully understand. That's why he lingers in her mind long after the conversation ends. He's not a rival to outwit, nor a follower to command. He's a fixed, unshakable presence in a sea of shifting alliances. The more she interacts with him, the more she realizes he's proof that influence without competition is not only possible, but more potent than anything she's ever wielded. For someone who thrives on the thrill of the game, finding a man who doesn't play it, yet still changes the outcome, is the ultimate paradox. And like all great paradoxes, it doesn't fade with time. It deepens, because she's not chasing him to win, she's drawn to him to understand. And in that pursuit, she's already hooked. If you enjoyed peeling back the layers of this dynamic and seeing why Sigma males quietly bend the rules of the power game, then don't just disappear into the shadows. hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop a like if this got you thinking, share it with someone who needs to hear it, you know exactly who, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I read them all. And hey, if you're feeling bold, turn on that notification bell, because the next video might just challenge everything you thought you knew. Your move